Trump's fixation on voting has had mixed results, he still has ways to affect November's elections. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Atlanta app. President Donald Trump has tried many ways to tighten his grip on U.S. elections, from signing executive orders to pushing restrictive legislation in Congress. Monday's Supreme Court ruling siding with states that accept late-arriving mail ballots was the latest example showing the limits of his reach. It followed back-to-back rulings last week that barred his two sweeping executive orders seeking to change national election rules, more court rulings preventing his Department of Justice from obtaining detailed state voter data, and his stalled attempts to get the Senate to pass the SAVE Act. That measure would eliminate nearly all absentee voting, require citizenship documents to register to vote, and impose photo identification requirements nationwide right before the midterm elections. It's been a mixed bag for Republicans, said University of Notre Dame law professor Derek Muller. But the president, he added, has come up mostly empty-handed. Trump's efforts have not been entirely fruitless. Republican-run states have satisfied his demands to redraw congressional district lines, efforts buoyed by the Supreme Court striking down a key section of the Voting Rights Act, and he has been directing his Department of Justice to investigate voting and election operations, which Democrats see as a possible prelude to their involvement in November. All the activity around how the nation votes and runs its elections is a reflection of the Republican president's long fixation on his false claim that his 2020 election defeat was rigged. He has been so frustrated by the inability of the Senate to pass the SAVE Act that he has refused to sign a bipartisan housing bill. Read more. He weighed in again Monday after the Supreme Court's decision in the mail ballot deadline case, saying on his social media account that he is trying to save America from crooked elections. Voting rights groups and Democrats see him abusing power and attempting to suppress legal voters to gain an advantage in the midterms when control of Congress is at stake. Regardless, Mueller said Trump faces legal and political realities. The Constitution gives the states and Congress authority over elections while providing no such role for the president. That's how federalism works, Mueller said. Here's a look at Trump's efforts to reshape election rules and what options he might have left for the November midterms. Focus on non-citizens and voter data has met roadblocks. The president has repeatedly said U.S. elections are riddled with fraud in part because of non-citizen voting. Research shows the problem to be rare, accounting for a minuscule percentage of fraud cases. Convictions are measured in the hundreds over periods in which tens of millions of ballots are cast. A person holds a sign about protecting voting rights during a protest near the White House, May 11, 2026, in Washington. AP photo/Jacqueline Martin file. A person holds a sign about protecting voting rights during a protest near the White House, May 11, 2026, in Washington. AP photo/Jacqueline Martin file. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook. Copy link. Copied. Print. Email. X linked in Blue Sky, Flipboard, Pinterest, Reddit. Read more. Trump's view resulted in a multi-agency push to nationalize voter data and use federal resources to help states remove voters from the rolls. The Department of Justice has sought detailed voter files from multiple states, data that would include dates of birth and partial Social Security numbers. Democratic and some Republican secretaries of state balked, and federal lawsuits followed. The administration has lost every case so far. Homeland Security citizenship tech rejected in court. Trump's Department of Homeland Security, with help from the DOJ effort led by Elon Musk, revamped a government tool called SAVE, Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements. The program has been a key pillar of his efforts to cull potentially ineligible voters from state rolls. Last week, a federal judge blocked its use as a mass citizenship check. The administration, according to its own news releases, had allowed local election administrators to search users by the thousands using a wider range of metrics rather than DHS-issued identification numbers. At least 67 million registrations, primarily in Republican-controlled states, were analyzed. Tens of thousands were flagged as potential non-citizens or people who had died, but some voters were wrongly identified as ineligible. U.S. District Court Judge Sparkle L. Sipnanen ruled that Trump's changes abrogated Americans' sensitive personal data in a way that could result in voters being wrongly purged from the rolls. All in all, the federal government has knowingly trampled on the privacy rights of American citizens in a manner that threatens the sacred right to vote, Sipnanen said in her order. Executive orders used in place of legislation, as presidents before him. Trump signed executive orders when Congress would not enact his policy preferences. Trump's first order reflected his emphasis on non-citizens. Like the SAVE Act pending on Capitol Hill, it sought to require would-be voters to document their citizenship to be able to register to vote. U.S. District Court Judge Denise Casper put a temporary block on the order last year as she considered the case and last week made her decision permanent. The Constitution, Casper wrote, does not grant the president any specific powers over elections. Trump issued a second order in March as the SAVE Act's rough path in Congress became obvious. He called for a national voter list using data from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and the Social Security Administration. Further, the order would have empowered the U.S. Postal Service to determine who gets an absentee ballot and threatened local elections officials with prosecution. Absentee voting is a staple of U.S. elections, but Trump describes the practice incorrectly as allowing fraud, even as he has used it himself. A 2025 report by the Brookings Institution found that mail voting fraud occurred in only 0.00043% of total mail ballots cast. Democratic secretaries of state sued, and U.S. District Court Judge Indira Talwani made the same legal assessment as Casper. The provisions, she wrote last week, unconstitutionally violate the separation of powers. The White House has indicated it will appeal. Even Trump says the SAVE Act has long odds. Trump on Monday called the Senate logjam crazy, and one of the holdouts, Republican Alaska Sen. Lisa Murkowski, Trump deranged. It's the latest legislative tussle that prompted Trump to demand Republicans scrap the filibuster, which requires most major legislation to get support from 60 of the 100 senators. But that likely wouldn't matter in this case, with 4 of the Senate's 53 Republicans declaring their opposition to the bill itself: Murkowski, Susan Collins of Maine, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina. The president acknowledged Monday that the SAVE Act is probably not going to happen. Trump still has options for the November elections. Both major parties have national operations to monitor elections, including legal teams ready to file challenges. Despite the Republican National Committee losing the mail ballot case, Chairman Joe Gruters on Monday alluded to those efforts. "We are not going to be deterred by this decision, and the RNC will keep fighting to have elections and on Election Day," he said. Meanwhile, Trump has been developing a possible roadmap for more aggressive actions. His U.S. attorney in Los Angeles said in June that he had opened multiple election fraud investigations, and he sent a prosecutor to the county's vote tabulation center after California's June primary. 6 months earlier, FBI agents executed a warrant and seized ballots and other records from the 2020 election in Georgia's Fulton County, which includes Atlanta. Supporters of President Donald Trump carry flags and signs as they parade past the Capitol in Washington, after news that President-elect Joe Biden had defeated the incumbent in the race for the White House in Washington, Nov. 7, 2020. AP photo/J. Scott Applewhite. File supporters of President Donald Trump carry flags and signs as they parade past the Capitol in Washington, after news that President-elect Joe Biden had defeated the incumbent in the race for the White House in Washington, Nov. 7, 2020. AP photo/J. Scott Applewhite. File add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook copy link copied print email X LinkedIn Blue Sky Flipboard Pinterest Reddit Read more Mueller, the law professor, said local elections officials already are having conversations about chain of custody disputes for ballots as they are cast, collected, counted, and stored. UCLA law professor Rick Hasen noted that judicial warrants are required for the kind